Alright, hello everybody, this is Intermediate O. I'm an Evangelion fan living in Tokyo, and I've been meaning to put this video out for a while now. So the international release of Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0 is about a month away, and so I thought I'd give a little video recommendation list of things you should/could watch before the final Evangelion movie comes out, if you want to have a little bit more of a enhanced experience upon viewing it. So today's video is in no way things that you have to watch to understand the final Evangelion movie or that you need to watch. These are just things that I feel like if you watch them before seeing it, or even if you don't have the time and you watch them afterwards, it will just kind of enhance the experience of watching the final Evangelion film. So yeah, I'm just going to hop into it. We're going to start from number 5 and work our way down to number 1, and it's going to go from entries that I feel like you would get kind of the least amount out of watching it beforehand, down to what I think is what you'd get the most out of watching it and then watching the final Evangelion movie. Alright, so let's just get to it. Number 5, Ultraman Ace, episodes 13 and 14. So Ultraman has been a pretty big influence on the director and creator of Evangelion, Hideaki Anno, as well as Evangelion just directly itself. And in this final movie, it does actually build on some hints to some Ultraman properties that were done previously in the rebuild films. So back in 2.0, there were these small references to Ultraman directly, where during the next time preview for 3.0, that was at the end of 2.0, you actually did see this scene with what seems to be sigils that are based off the same sigils that are used in Ultraman as the Ultra sign for 4 of the Ultra Brothers. In addition to this, the actual 4 atoms that appear in 2.0 also seem to have their core placement pretty identical to the 4 Ultra Brothers at the same time. And so these 4 brothers were Zophie, Man, Seven, and Jack. And so at the time, because it was these 4 Ultra Brothers specifically, people were wondering if this was a reference to Ultraman Ace, where there actually is a 2-episode arc, which is what I'm recommending, episode 13 and 14, where basically these 4 Ultra Brothers come back to the 5th Ultraman, Ultraman Ace, and just have like a 2-episode arc where they appear. And with the final film, it does definitely give you a little bit more of that, so I would definitely recommend, if you have the time, this isn't that big of a deal. Ultraman is still Ultraman tonally, it is very different from Evangelion, but if you have the time, yeah, you can check out these 2 episodes, and I feel like, yeah, you'll notice a little few Easter eggs when you're watching the final film. Luckily, most of the Ultraman series has been released in America on DVD, as well as just streaming in multiple places. I actually checked out these 2 episodes on Tubi, so I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description for those if you want to watch it. Number 4, Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water. So Nadia was a series that Hideaki Anno directed before he did Evangelion, and there were actually some references to Nadia in 3.0 itself, where some of the tracks from the film were actually borrowed from Nadia, which also shared the same composer, Shiro Sagisu. But additionally, there were kind of aesthetic similarities to Nadia too, where Misato basically acts as kind of a new Captain Nemo, and additionally, the Wunder itself kind of acts as a new Nautilus. So that's all stuff that was in 3.0 itself. In the final movie, there is a few other little aesthetic similarities you might notice. But the main reason why I would recommend, if you're able to watch Nadia, that it would kind of enhance the experience, is there is a couple scenes, and specifically one scene in particular, that is very similar to a scene in Nadia, but I do feel like Nadia kind of did it better. The execution in the final film was pretty disappointing, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that'll be kind of a thing you'll notice if you do watch Nadia beforehand. I will say that one of the problems with watching Nadia, though, is that I believe it's never streamed in America, but the Blu-ray was in print for a long time, and I actually bought the Blu-ray, and I have the discs with me, but it's been out of print now, so if you can't find the discs, not that big of a deal if you can't watch it. It's just if you were able to watch it, Nadia would be kind of a nice addition to your road to watching the final Evangelion movie. And as mentioned, it's also the same director and the same composer, so yeah, it kind of has that same flavor of Evangelion, which obviously if you're watching this, you're probably an Evangelion fan. Number 3, SSSS.GRIDMAN. So the Gridman anime series actually does have some interesting ties to the Evangelion films in a certain way, where actually the anime series, which was produced by Studio Trigger, actually got its start as an anime short that was also produced by Studio Trigger for Studio Khara's and Hideaki Anno's Japan Animator Expo. So at the time, the short acted as kind of a little mini-sequel to the original tokusatsu live-action Gridman series, but then this anime series is kind of its own complete thing. Additionally, when the full anime series was actually produced, they also did actually manage to get the same composer of Evangelion, Shirosagi Suigen. So the music in the show definitely gives you kind of that Eva vibe, and additionally, the tone of the series is much different from the live action series as far as I've seen, where the anime series definitely has more of a kind of melancholic Eva vibe to it. But that's really not the reason why I'm recommending the series as a whole. The series isn't that long. It's only 12 episodes. So it's not that big of a time sink if you do want to watch it. But the main reason I'm really recommending it is because of basically how it turns out, like basically how the final product is finished. With this final Evangelion specifically, it is the final movie, so a lot of the things I'm going to be recommending in this video actually pertain to how these stories finish and how these stories come to an end, which I find kind of very similar in kind of eerie ways to the final movie and how everything comes to an end. Actually, SSSS.GRIDMAN was one of the series that I wanted to discuss in a potential video idea that I had about series that may have stolen unused rebuild plot points. So before the final Evangelion movie came out, there was kind of a string of series that I feel like might have, gotten behind the scenes information about the planning stages or the direction that the final Evangelion movie was going to go. And since it was kind of in limbo for so long, for 9 full years basically, maybe these people who are kind of close to that production use those aspects in their own works. So this was one of those series. And as I mentioned earlier, the production was originally actually directly tied to Studio Khara, and all the other series I wanted to discuss in that video as well were also series that somehow had their foot in the door with Evangelion, Studio Khara, and/or Hideaki Anno. So yeah, if you have the time, go ahead and check out SSSS.GRIDMAN. I believe it's streaming in a lot of places. And yeah, so the main reason for the recommendation is that the series as a whole as a similarity, but more as the series, how it comes together for its finale. Number 2, Sayonara Jupiter. Alright, so this is definitely the entry on this list where I feel like you get the most bang for your buck. It is literally just one movie, and I feel like there are so many little things in this movie that you will kind of pick up on if you were to watch it before you were to watch the final movie, the final Evangelion movie, or if you do watch the final Evangelion movie and you come back to try and watch this movie as well, I feel like you will notice a lot of similarities. And so these similarities between this movie, Sayonara Jupiter, and the final Evangelion movie are not a coincidence. There is one pretty big direct reference to this film in the final Evangelion movie. Besides that, there are a couple other smaller references and kind of tonal references and theme references to this movie, so that's definitely why I feel like you should kind of check this movie out if you can. I will be doing a video on it pretty soon. It's kind of the next editorial video I have lined up to do, which is basically the movie that inspired the final Evangelion movie, which is this movie, Sayonara Jupiter. Break time. Honorable mentions. So this is just a fun little thing I thought I'd do before showing what I decided was my number 1 recommendation to watch before watching the final Evangelion movie. And so these are just kind of some tiny things where, smoke them if you got them. If you got the time, if they're available to you, or you're just kind of interested in them in general, it wouldn't hurt to watch them. So the first one is Gunbuster, and specifically Gunbuster the movie, because I believe it's the most widely available one, and it cuts out kind of the extra stuff from the OVAs anyways. I believe the only place it's streaming currently is on Verve and HiDive. I'll put a link in the description. But yeah, this is the movie version of the original OVA that Hideaki Anno directed, and it was actually his professional directorial debut. I will say, though, that the reason why this is only in the honorable mentions is watching this movie and then watching the final Evangelion movie doesn't give you a ton to chew on, similarity-wise. It's just kind of a fun thing to watch where, seeing the director's first work and seeing the director's last work, his most recent work. So yeah, that's kind of fun. However, the thing I feel like I would recommend more over that is actually Gunbuster 2, which is directed by Kazuya Tsurumaki, who's kind of the co-director for the rebuild films. And I actually only watched Gunbuster 2 recently myself, and definitely if you watch Gunbuster 2, and this you can also watch either the movie version or the OVA version, but the OVA version is streaming in a lot of places, so it's actually more accessible. But by watching Gunbuster 2, you definitely realize how much of Tsurumaki comes through in the rebuild movies, and not just Anno. So Anno really didn't have anything to do with Gunbuster 2, and there's so many similarities between the production values, I'm just talking about like aesthetics and, kind of, there are some audio elements that are reused, and some explosion effects. Like there's definitely, if you watch Gunbuster 2, you will see how much of Tsurumaki is in the rebuild movies and not just Anno. Next, I have the War in Space, which, similar to Sayonara Jupiter, there is a pretty big direct reference, but overall, because I watched the War in Space is not really that good of a movie, and really, the reference, like, you really don't gain that much by watching the War in Space beforehand, so don't really feel like you need to. It's just kind of a fun thing. It is a movie that seeped its way into the final Evangelion movie in a certain way. Building on that, though, what was actually good that I did watch was Atragon, and so Atragon kind of served as an inspiration to War in Space, where if you actually notice, the main ship on both of these covers are pretty much identical, where it's a submarine with a drill for the head. Additionally, both of these submarines are also called Goten, so it is a direct reference. It's basically, they're reusing it, they're both Toho movies. And so I watched that. So I watched the War in Space because there's a direct reference in the final movie to it, and so I watched it, wasn't that good. But then I also watched Atragon because the War in Space itself is kind of just a reference to Atragon. And Atragon was much better. Atragon is a much better film. So if you have the time and it's available to you, yeah, Atragon is a pretty fun movie for what it is. And yeah, of course, both of these are both tokusatsu movies. So if you're not really into tokusatsu movies or Toho tokusatsu film movies like that, like, you don't really have to worry about it. Alright, and so this is just like also a little bit of fun, a little extra information. When I was trying to kind of, explore the references that are kind of in the final Evangelion movie, I kind of went down this rabbit hole about like all the connections from these tokusatsu series that have seeped into Evangelion. So first, I just like to show these three movies. 1957's The Mysterians, 1959's Battle in Outer Space, and then The War in Space in 1977. So these three movies are kind of what is known as Toho's space opera trilogy. So all of these three movies are kind of connected in this way, and additionally, The War in Space actually started as a direct sequel to Battle in Outer Space, but it ended up just being a kind of spiritual sequel that reuses a lot of the elements of Battle in Outer Space. So all three of these movies are connected in that way. And then we have 1963's Atragon, which is also connected to War in Space, because Atragon itself served as an inspiration to War in Space, reusing the Goten and the submarine design. And additionally, War in Space is also connected to 1984's Sayonara Jupiter, where the War in Space actually kind of usurped Sayonara Jupiter in 1977, where Toho seemed to kind of really want to beat Star Wars to the punch when it comes to, galactic sci-fi. And so that was when they originally approached the people who made Sayonara Jupiter to start making it, but ultimately they kind of went with the War in Space as kind of the rival to Star Wars that year in Japan. So the War in Space actually came out about 7 months after Star Wars came out in America, but it actually came out about 7 months before it came out in Japan. So this was kind of them trying to beat Star Wars to the punch there. And ultimately, Sayonara Jupiter, even though it started kind of production in 1977, it took them all the way until 1984 to actually get it made. And Sayonara Jupiter kind of ended up being less of a Star Wars contemporary, but more of a Arthur C. Clarke or 2001 A Space Odyssey contemporary, or rival if you want to say. So yeah, that's just a little bit of background there for anybody who thought that'd be a little bit of fun information. I thought it'd be fun information. And lastly, if you have the time, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to watch the final Evangelion movie from the original series from Neon Genesis. Again, yeah. If you got the time, go ahead and watch it. Number 1, Eureka 7. Alright, so yeah, if you recognize the stuff in my thumbnail, you could probably already tell that Eureka 7 was going to be one of my recommendations. But when I say Eureka 7, I mean all of Eureka 7. Like, all of it. So first we have Eureka 7, the 2005 series, which is 50 episodes. Then we have Eureka 7, Good Night, Sleep Tight, Young Lovers, which is the 2009 film, which kind of just reuses footage from the series, but it creates an entirely new original story with it. And yes, I know the title is super long. The Japanese title was originally Pocket Full of Rainbows. I personally prefer that title. Then there's Eureka 7AO, which is actually a direct sequel to the original Eureka 7 TV series. Came out in 2012, and it's only 24 episodes. Then, though, quite recently, we got the announcement of a new trilogy called Eureka 7 High Evolution, which was supposed to be 3 films coming out in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And similar to Rebuild of Evangelion, these films were supposed to kind of recap the original series, but by the end of the film trilogy, it was supposed to become its own entirely new original ending. The whole High Evolution Project 2 is pretty much just a big parody of the Rebuild films, and I would love to do a video one day kind of comparing them to the Rebuild films. It's basically just like $1 million parody of the rebuild films. It's kind of crazy that it even happened. But actually, this is what the High Evolution project looks like today, where only 2 of the movies came out. So we did get Eureka 7 High Evolution 1 in 2017, but in 2018, they ended up kind of completely scrapping the naming of the project, and they just called the second movie just Anemone. And then High Evolution ended up becoming the subtitle. So it's Anemone, subtitle, Eureka 7 High Evolution. The final High Evolution movie, what was previously known as High Evolution 3, is also just going to be simply titled Eureka, and then the subtitle is Eureka 7 High Evolution. And that movie is actually scheduled to come out this year, 2021. It was supposed to come out this summer, but it actually got delayed until fall. It is one of the movies I'm most looking forward to, actually. And so yeah, these are kind of the 5 entries we have for Eureka 7 so far. So TV, movie, TV, movie, and movie. But just to get the lowdown and kind of, this is my consensus on how these go is Eureka 7, the TV series, very good, very, very good. Movie, bad. Like, it's kind of like a recap movie, but like with its own original thing going on. I don't like it. Most of the fandom also does not like it. Eureka 7 AO, good. I like it a lot. I actually really love Eureka 7 AO. Most of the people who like Eureka 7 also, watched Eureka 7 AO, but a lot of people found disappointment in it, even though they kind of like a lot of aspects in it. I'm one of those people who I kind of unapologetically like AO. The best way I could compare it to is actually Avatar, The Last Airbender, where Eureka 7 is a genuinely good series. It's a genuinely good series, it's a masterpiece kind of, and it is the original. So that's kind of the Avatar, and then Eureka 7 AO is kind of like The Legend of Korra, where there are people who like it, and there are some people who even like it more than the original, but, most people probably would say it's not as good as the original, and kind of a disappointment because of that, because it couldn't live up to it. I love Eureka 7 AO. I actually am one of those freaks who I would say I like AO better than Eureka 7, the TV series, the original one. I don't think it's better, though. I don't think it's a better series. I just enjoy it more than the original TV series. And I'm actually like that for Korra as well. I enjoy Korra more, even though I think Avatar: The Last Airbender, the original 3 seasons, are better. Then going to the High Evolution project, though. High Evolution 1 is terrible, bad, awful, awful, really bad. It is almost not even a movie. It's so bad. Like, it is genuinely so bad. And I'm, as one of the people who did not like Good Night, Sleep Tight, Young Lovers, the original movie, mostly because of its, like, recapped aspect and, like, its kind of reuse of animation and what they do with that, kind of, they kind of came back and they did it in an even worse way. Like, I never thought they would kind of top the badness of the first movie, but Eureka 7 High Evolution 1 is kind of, it's just so bad. Like, it's basically not even a movie. But, surprisingly, Anemone, I'm so happy they kind of changed, like, the entire marketing for the movies, because Anemone is good, very good. I love the Anemone movie so much. It is also kind of contentious because it is so different from the original series, but I'm totally fine with that. Like, I love how different it is. It's awesome. I love it. As to why I'm recommending them, though, so in the original series, Eureka 7, I felt like this. I felt like this since Evangelion 3.0. The ship design for the Wunder is very similar to the main ship design for the Gecko State in Eureka 7, in my opinion. I personally feel that the Wunder is much more similar to just looking at this ship from Eureka 7 than it is to the ship from Nadia. They both have avian structures, and additionally, both ships also kind of have this false head going on, so they have this avian structure with a head, but then the bridge to the ship is actually sitting on a different part, like kind of like, so you got false head, and then you kind of have like the real head that's sitting on the chin of the false head. So yeah, they kind of have that thing going on. Additionally, even just the bridge crew layout is eerily similar to me when it comes to the Wunder, where in the front, you kind of have the sultry older helmswoman, and then right next to her, you kind of have the rough and tough grizzled veteran, and then right behind him, you have the young newbie radar operator who also has a flair for pink, including kind of prominently pink glossed lips. So yeah, I feel like that can't be a coincidence. Like they basically share the same character, not just designs, but like personalities and exact positions on the bridge. Kind of eerie to me. There are also other references and like aesthetics I feel like I did pick up on in the final movie that are kind of, inspired by the Eureka 7 TV series, but there honestly isn't a huge amount of them, especially like when you consider that Eureka 7 is a 50 episode series. Like, there could be more references. However, if you do watch Eureka 7, you will probably notice way more Evangelion references in Eureka 7 than the other way around. It just stood out to me because the ways in which Eureka 7 is different from Evangelion, those are the things that ended up showing up in the final Evangelion movies, in my opinion. So I feel like they kind of have to be some sort of form of inspiration. And like I mentioned earlier, the first Eureka 7 movie, Goodnight Sleep Tight Young Lovers, I'm not a fan of. I don't really think it's that good of a movie. But, aggravatingly, there is also some things that seem to be directly referenced in the final Evangelion movie. So if you notice those things, if you have the time, you want to watch this as well, like you may notice what those things are. Eureka 7 AO though, which Eureka 7 AO actually does function as kind of a direct sequel to the original TV series. I would say, in my opinion, Eureka 7 AO has kind of the most similarities with the final Evangelion movie. Like, I got a lot of very strong Eureka 7 AO vibes in the final movie, which is great to me because I'm a Eureka 7 AO fan. When it comes to the High Evolution trilogy though, like I said earlier, the first one is pretty bad. The only reason I'd recommend you watch it is so that you can see the trilogy as a whole, because there are some connections. There are some connections between the first movie and the second movie, Anemone, but the second movie, Anemone, kind of functions as its own self-contained story, so you really don't have to watch the first one if you don't want to. But it does not hurt. The interesting thing though to look at the Eureka 7 film trilogy through comparison to Evangelion, and specifically the final movie, the High Evolution trilogy, it really is a parody. It is really a parody of the Rebuild movies, but because the second movie came out before the final Evangelion movie, it does make me wonder, because it is eerily, there are some eerily similarities that should not exist if this is a parody of Eva, because Eva was not out yet. I really wonder what would have happened if Eureka, the final movie, had come out before this final Evangelion movie, but who knows? Like, it's going to come out after now. It's going to come out in a couple months. I wonder if they're going to try to, fit some of the 3.0 plus 1.0 stuff into the final Eureka 7 movie. I kind of feel like they probably will, since they've kind of went so hard on the Evangelion references up until this point. So yeah, these 5 things, I'd say more than half of them are good, so if you have the time, please check them out. I would also tell you to check them out in chronological order, like they're listed on the screen here, in release order. Of course though, since 2 of them are bad, if you really don't have the time, you can cut them out. You don't really need to watch them. And Eureka 7, this is the thing. Of the 3 that are remaining, Eureka 7, Eureka 7 AO, and Anemone, the one that is the longest is also the one I feel like you will get the least out of. And I don't mean least out of as a series. I just mean as an appetizer for the final Evangelion movie. So if you really wanted to, you could also cut Eureka 7. And I feel like you would get a ton out of Eureka 7 AO and Anemone just by themselves. And Anemone is definitely, similarly to Sayonara Jupiter, you would get the most bang for your buck, where it's just one movie, and I feel like you would get a lot out of it. Eureka 7 AO, I feel like you'd get more out of it, but it's longer. And if you have the time, watch Eureka 7, the original TV series, though. My problem with this recommendation that's currently on the screen, or just these 2 things, is that Eureka 7 is genuinely a good series. I would consider it a masterpiece, and it's kind of hard to not recommend watching it first, because I feel like that's going to be the best possible way to watch it. Basically, if you watch Eureka 7 AO or Anemone before watching the original series, I feel like you will get less out of the original series, but it's still going to be good. Like, no matter what, the original series is still going to be good, no matter what, no matter when you visit it. On the other hand, though, there is kind of this sick part of me that really wants to hear, if you do what's on the screen right now, if you watch Eureka 7 AO, or if you just watch Anemone, even, please come back to this video and tell me what you thought of them without having watched the original series. Because in my personal opinion, Anemone specifically, I loved Anemone a lot. One of the things that I did find disappointing with it, though, is that it was a Eureka 7 property. It is really so different from the rest of the series, and such its own thing, that I almost wish it just was its own thing. Like, it was its own new original property, but maybe the only reason it ever even got made is because they could use the Eureka 7 name, even though I don't think that holds much water nowadays anyways, unless you're like really into pachinko. But yeah, Anemone holds up as its own singular movie, so if you go watch that, please come back and tell me what you thought of it. And if you go watch Eureka 7 AO, also come back and tell me what you thought of it as well. Eureka 7 AO I also think holds up if you've never seen the original series, and I feel like you may actually like Eureka 7 AO more than if you watch the original series first. Just because a lot of the people who came away from AO disappointed were people who, they wanted more of the original series, and AO is kind of different from that. And all of these things as well, I will have links to in the description if you want to stream them. The first 3, Eureka 7, the 2 TV series, and the Good Night Sleep Tight Young Lovers movies are all streaming on Funimation if you have an account on there. Unfortunately, Eureka 7, High Evolution 1, and then High Evolution 2 Anemone are only streaming for some reason on Amazon, and you have to rent them. But yeah, I still definitely recommend checking out Anemone on Amazon. Like, it's great. I love it. Please give me feedback if you watch it. Alright, so that's it for today's video. I kind of got rambly, but that's kind of what this is all about. It's just kind of me having fun talking, and I was really trying not to spoil the things that do appear in the final Evangelion movie, because, yeah, that's obviously why I'd be recommending these things. But for the people who have seen these things, like if you've seen any of the things in the list that I mentioned, and you're kind of wondering to me, how did that really translate to the final Evangelion movie? If you know what happens, like if you've read the spoilers and you're wondering like, how did you see a similarity there? Go ahead and ask me in the comments. I don't mind discussing that below. I definitely kind of want to discuss them. Maybe one day I'll actually do like a head-to-head comparison about some of these things. I would love to do a head-to-head comparison about Eureka 7 and the Evangelion movies. Like, I feel like that would be really fun. So yeah, that's it for this video. If you're not, and you like this video, since you made it to the end, I'm going to assume you probably liked it. Go ahead and give me a subscribe if you're okay with that. I've been sitting at 700 subscribers for like months now. And I just think it'd be really cool to hit 1K. I feel like if I hit 1K, it'd be kind of, it would be a good motivator for me. So yeah, go ahead and do that if you feel like it. The next video project I have lined up will be the movie that inspired Evangelion 3.0+1.0, which will be a video analysis of Sayonara Jupiter. Alright, thanks for watching everybody. Bye.